Hello everyone, welcome to the show. The transfer window, I feel, was well named this year. A whole lot of window shopping, not a lot of spending, I think, was the thing.
I should say the last day in England. I think,
right, last day in the Premier League.
Being a little Anglo-centric here, you know.
A day later. Alejandro Moreno is wearing his Man City shirt.
What?
Gabriel Marcotti is here, and Craig Burley to discuss the winners and losers. Let's start with perhaps the incident that dominated the last day, the last 24 hours of the transfer window. David De Gea. It was David De Gea. He's not going anywhere for now, at least. It's rare, Gab, that you see a transaction where all the parties end up looking a little buffoonish, but they do, don't they? So, how did this happen, or how did it not happen?
All right, I'll try to give you the capsule explanation, but they had all the information. You know, the deal was all set. What you have to do is you have to upload all the data to FIFA to get the international clearance. And then you have to notify the upcoming FAs that you're going to register this player, because we call it a transfer deadline. It's really a registration deadline. Something went wrong. Manchester United and Real Madrid are blaming each other, essentially. Yeah. They've sent out rival communiques. Real Madrid fired shots first. But the bottom line is it did not go through in time. The registration wasn't received by the deadline, which was midnight local time in Spain.
It is utterly bizarre, isn't it? But the long and the short of it, it means David De Gea is still a Manchester United player. So what does it mean now, Greg?
I see another statement from Real Madrid and Man United saying, well, it wasn't us. We did what we had to do. I mean, who cares? Who cares?
He's got
mine here is what I'm looking at now, probably like most people, and David De Gea, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Clearly there was a management issue in how it was managed up to now. Van Gaal said the player wasn't ready to play. De Gea said he was. Van Gaal said he sent the goalkeeping coach in to speak to him rather than speak to him himself. It's a whole mess. He now has to manage that situation. The bottom line here is, I think Real Madrid will get their man eventually, either in January or for zero in the summer. And Man United have got to manage that player between now and the end of the season. Of course, register him for the Champions League, and the Euros are next summer. So it's a real sort of 6 and 2 3s for the player in terms of how does he play? Does he play often enough? Does he play in the Champions League? Does he go in January? The losers here are Man United for me, because they're going to lose a top goalkeeper for nothing eventually.
Right. Well, there's that, and there's also this fascinating, possibly unprecedented situation where you have 3 goalkeepers at Manchester United right now. One of them is De Gea. Craig summed up his situation and why there's issues there. Another one, of course, is Victor Valdez, whose deal didn't go through, and who is very much persona non grata to Louis van Gaal right now. And the third is Romero, who, you know, looks okay playing for Argentina, but you suspect there's a reason that for the past 2 seasons he's been a backup at 2 different clubs like Monaco and Sampdoria. And now all of a sudden he's asked to keep goal at the Theatre of Dreams. It's what you call a pretty dysfunctional setup.
Dysfunctional, so much so that now, if you're Louis van Gaal, it's not only about managing, but making a practical decision. Because in the end, you want the best player out on the field. So if you think that David De Gea is your best goalkeeper, whatever differences you've had up until this point, you put him out on the field.
Well, unless he hit his head repeatedly, he has to think that David De Gea is his best goalkeeper. He'll need some time to work on it, but I think ultimately, you know, it's in David De Gea's interest to play for United, and it's in United's interest to have him play for him. The one wrinkle, though, is if you are hoping to move him in January, and that's going to be at a cut price, is do you play him in the Champions League, which, of course, opens up a whole other layer, because if he's cup-tied, Real Madrid can then ask for, or can pay even less money.
From what we know of Louis van Gaal and his way of operating, though, is there a clear path back for De Gea? Because he can be pretty obstinate, can't he, Van Gaal?
Well, then lose his job.
He's been playing him for the last month.
Lose his job because De Gea is the best goalkeeper he has by a long way. It's quite simple. And I'd imagine he's not an unprofessional individual. I'd imagine he's very professional and level-headed. He seems to...
Van Gaal.
De Gea. The whole thing is, though, Adrian, I don't understand why United have wanted to make this last as long as they have. I get the fact they're trying to get as much money as they can, but for a few £million or dollars here and there, they could have cleaned this up a long time ago, because they knew that Real Madrid wanted the player. For me, they could have got the money in, maybe take a few million less, get him out, go to Tottenham and say, Hugo Lloris or whoever, we'll offer you this, let's get the goalkeeper in, let De Gea go to Real Madrid?
I think we need to be very clear on this, because there's this line being spun, and again, United Spain, Real Madrid, everybody does it. Says like, well, Real Madrid only made their first bid for the player on deadline day.
Right.
Now, that might be the first formal bid, but if you believe that that's how transfers get done, you have another thing coming, right? De Gea's agent is Jorge Mendes. De Gea went with Jorge Mendes almost exclusively so he could get him to Real Madrid. Jorge Mendes talks with Manchester United every single day, and he talks almost every single day with Real Madrid, and he talks with just about every club in Europe. He does a lot of business. The idea that you couldn't, that there wasn't negotiating behind the scenes. What happened is United set this big price on him, said Gigi Buffon money, £32 million, and that might have been a negotiating tactic, but behind the scenes, clearly there was communication between Mendes and Real Madrid.
And briefly, because I want to stay with United, but where does this leave Real Madrid in the goalkeeping department for now?
Well, they're embarrassed in how the situation has transpired. And now here's the thing. You have Keylor Navas, who over the weekend was very good, and you brought in because you thought that he could be an option for you. Now Keylor Navas has to go back to Real Madrid into a locker room where the club president doesn't want you there, the coach really couldn't care less for you either, and then the players weren't really sticking up for you and saying, hey, no,
right,
Keylor, stay here. They were happy that De Gea was coming in, and so now you have to manage as a player that, look, I'm the goalkeeper, I'm the number one, and I'm the best option you have available. So for
presumably he's not deluded. Presumably, I mean, you guys are professional footballers, you got a lot of faith in your own ability, but presumably when there's somebody who's clearly better than you, you learn to live with it. You understand that, and you say, I'll do my best.
But who's clearly better than Keylor Navas? Right now, in Real Madrid? De Gea's not in Madrid.
Well, no, but I'm saying it's not going to be so offended that they were shipping him out to make way for...
No. What he may be offended is the $2 million that he's giving up, because he would have doubled his salary going to Manchester United.
Let's go back to United, because I want to tie a bow on their whole summer transfer window operations in and out. And Craig, how do you assess what they've done? When you go back to, Schweinsteiger and Darmian and Schneider...
What they've done, they've outlaid a hell of a lot of money on a young guy with potential. Depay, I'm not totally convinced with. I think Schneiderlin's a decent player. Darmian's a very steady player. I think Schweinsteiger, we talked about him with injuries. What we've seen so far, and it is very early, I'm not sure he's got the legs anymore to sort of get about. And look, we're talking about goalkeepers and talking about Man United. The bottom line is, early season this business looked okay, Adrian. But after all this money spent, their centre-half pairing is still, with Phil Jones injured, going to be Daley Blind and Chris Smalling. Wayne Rooney really is the only striker they have of any note. Chicharito Hernandez has gone to Leverkusen. The young Martial has come in. Rooney is still the man. They haven't exactly filled the jigsaw in, have they? Is
it possible to construct an argument that, with perhaps one glaring exception, they've actually had a decent transfer window, Gab? Is it possible, looking at that list?
Well, I mean, I think there's two factors. We were praising them early on because they didn't get taken to town over Schweinsteiger. Depay was a reasonable fee. Darmian, we liked all those signings. But the assumption was, at least for me, was that they were going to bring in a top centre back. They were going to sort out the De Gea situation properly by selling him for a decent fee and bringing in a good replacement. And they were going to bring in another striker who could be an alternative to Rooney.
So 0 for 3.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, certainly 0 for 2. And then Martial, to me, it just seems like an enormous price to pay. And, again, you'll be spun. We were tracking him for weeks. No, but you signed him on the last day of the transfer window. If you like this guy so much, you would have signed him several months ago. And not been in a situation where Monaco were able to hold your feet to the fire and charge the moon for him.
They've paid a lot of money for Martial, a lot of money for a teenager.
A lot of money for potential.
Yeah.
Potential gets coaches fired. It's as simple as that. We all know and been around players that they were supposed to be the next big thing, and it doesn't pan out. And it's very difficult for me to understand a player that is now at 19 years old, supposed to be proving himself at Manchester United without having the sort of background, the sort of accomplishments coming into Manchester United. You don't prove yourself at Manchester United. You prove yourself before you come to Manchester United, so that then that move makes sense.
Who else was out there that they could have got for that money, though, that would have come in right now? When you look at where he's come from, France, Lacazette was going to go for the same sort of money, was he not? And he's 27.
Lacazette is the obvious one. You're getting somebody who showed that he's a proven goal scorer. Now, again, some people have spun the tale that, well, United didn't think Lacazette had the upside to develop. Yeah, but if he's going to be backing up Wayne Rooney, I mean, to me, they're two different profiles of players. Martial, we don't quite know what kind of player he's going to become. Even if he makes it, he might not make it as a center forward. He might make it as more of a second striker type. So it just seems bizarre. And the other thing is, if he's the alternative to Rooney, when Rooney's not there, somebody has to lead the line. So he's going to play, and he's going to play very differently from Rooney because he's a different skill set.
I said on yesterday's show, what United have done here, they've paid more money for a young guy with potential than Arsenal paid for Alexis Sanchez and Manchester City paid for Sergio Aguero. Those two players are quality players. They're proven players. Martial's 19 years old. Eric Cantona, a former United legend, came out and quoted as saying, "This is great, it's going to be the next fantastic thing." He's probably on the payroll of Man United. They're all coming out and saying that. Of course they're going to say that.
It is 3 times what they paid for Cristiano Ronaldo when he was a teenager.
Well,
It wasn't 2003, but I don't know if...
Well, Thierry Henry coming to Arsenal all those years ago, and he's been quoted as saying, coming from France, likes to drift to the left-hand side, all that nonsense. He's the next to Henry. Henry cost 11 million and had been at Juventus. OK, It didn't work out for him at Juve. But he'd been in Italy, and then Wenger brought him back. He was much more experienced.
I think he also won a World Cup, too.
He did indeed.
Which is kind of important.
We are far from done with the winners and losers in this transfer window. Of course, ESPNFC.com, the place to go to keep right up to date. When we return, Manchester City and Chelsea. We'll place them under the same sort of microscope. Well, this is what the Chelsea shopping list looked like for the transfer window. Pedro, of course, the headliner. Baba Rahman, Asmir Begovic. You know about the players that departed from Stamford Bridge. Different sort of transfer window, wasn't it? When you think of what they've done in the last 2 or 3 summers, Gab, particularly like Oscar and Hazard and Diego Costa coming in.
Well, I think from Mourinho's perspective, they dominated the Premier League last year, so what you really needed were tweaks, and not much more than that. And that's pretty much what we got. Then the Pedro opportunity came up, and of course they jumped all over it and let Cuadrado go.
Winners or losers, particularly thinking of the defence, Craig, did they have enough in that department?
Well, they let Felipe Luis go back to Atleti. Baba Rahman comes in. He may need to play because Ivanovic could get dropped and Azpilicueta may go back to his natural position. I think from Chelsea's perspective, they've got a strong squad. It's not playing particularly well at the moment. Most of the guys that did well last year aren't playing to the top of the game. But I thought they were going to try and make a statement, talk about Pogba, talk about Bale, people that are going to improve your team, because this Chelsea side were poor in the Champions League last year, and that's the big fish, I think, that Mourinho wants to catch as a Chelsea manager.
How do you assess it, Ali?
Well, you don't think of Chelsea coming into the transfer window and coming out with Papi Di Lobogi and thinking, all right, that's what we were looking for. That's the one that we wanted. They were in for John Stones. That didn't quite work out. Clearly, there are some issues defensively and issues that keep coming up with Ivanovic, because it's now 4 weeks in a row where he's not playing well. So I don't know that Chelsea did enough. I think they needed more than tweaking because they were... Towards the end of last season, they seem to be kind of helping themselves to the end line, but not really cruising to the end line.
But I think the argument that if I were Jose, I would make is that's because by the end they were all tired because I wasn't able to rotate enough. By tweaking, what I mean is having Ramirez fully fit all the season long, and you might see more of that rotation. They were only going to add if it was clearly somebody who would strengthen them. That was the line spun. So either they go and sign Stones for 40 million. Or they go with Gilles Joby, who is a guy who simply was there to add depth. He's reliable. He's a mid-table, solid defender, and against certain teams in the Premier League, that's all you need.
But that doesn't get you excited, though.
No, but it doesn't get you excited. But rather than going and spending 50 million on Mr. Mediocrity, I spend 4 million and I get somebody who's as good.
Do they have enough to defend their title, Craig? As this list.
No, I think they do. I just don't think they're playing well enough or defending well enough. I mean, they've got a very good striker in Costa. They've got backup in Remy and Falcao. But Hazard's not playing particularly well. Matic and Fabregas are treading water at the moment. Ali mentioned Ivanovic. Terry's been suspended. Cahill hasn't played particularly well, and the goalkeeper's been sent off. I mean, it just has been a poor
tale of woe.
But other than that, they've been great.
And Mourinho wants to fight the world and is blaming his medical staff. I mean, it's just not been a good start for them.
Man City, different sort of look to their window activity, and we haven't seen even Kevin De Bruyne here in a City shirt yet, have we? It's been a pretty impressive summer for Manuel Pellegrini, Gab.
Yeah, and you can say, well, it's easy to be impressive when you've got this enormous transfer budget, but I thought they moved really, really well. Obviously, they've got depth now, just about every position but one. If I were to quibble, I might look at the center forward position and talk about how
gets hurt.
if Aguero gets worse, you've got Boney, who is a solid player, and then beyond that, most top teams you would think have 3 legit center forward options if they're going to play one up. Of course, compared to Manchester United, they have an abundance of switches up front. But
As the wearer of the Man City shirt here,
What?
Ali, I think you should give us are they winners or losers? They've got to be winners, haven't they?
No, winners for sure, and the fact that they address needs. Center back position, Otamendi, check. You needed speed on the outside, Sterling, check. You needed somebody to give you an option outside of Jesus Navas, that's Kevin De Bruyne, check. So you see everything that they've done.
Enough to win the title?
Seem to have made sense. Well, when you look at how everybody else is playing around Manchester City, they've looked a whole lot better than everybody else. Yes, good enough.
only proviso is, come April time, they're going to be assessed by Craig's favorite people, the Club Financial Control Board.
The financial.
fair
Second
play.
favourite.
That's the issue.
We have much more to come. Arsenal. You want to see Arsenal under the same sort of microscope, don't you? These lot chomping at the bit to get into what Arsene Wenger has and has not done in this transfer window, and a little bit of Liverpool for you too. Now we need a special wide screen to look at the Arsenal transfers in this
Crickets.
Well, a lot of goalkeeper activity. Look at that. Check in. Lucas Podolski, they actually got 3 million for.
A lot of East European descent activity.
Yes.
I found.
Should we be surprised at that graphic? I mean, should we really be sat here and surprised? Oh, big surprise, Arsenal never moved for anybody in the transfer.
Arsene Wenger's supporters would say he values stability and
Yes, he got any?
continuity. He does have some, clearly, and clearly within the club structure.
Everybody else tried to make moves, and he sat on his hands, needed a striker and a midfielder, brought in a goalkeeper, a very good one. But come on.
When you think about Barcelona, with a transfer ban in place, they were more active in the transfer market than Arsenal was. Huh?
He always wants value, though, Wenger. He won't spend 50 million on a 28-year-old, will he? He won't do it.
It's not so much an value. I just genuinely think, partly he's happy with what he has. Partly also they've locked in a lot of guys to long-term contracts. People like Wilshere and Theo Walcott, and you have to move them on if you're going to bring somebody in. It's difficult to move them on, so he'd rather put his faith in them.
Has this sealed third place again for them?
Oh, they're in the top 4. Oh, they'll be in the top 4. You bet your bottom dollar they'll be in the top 4.
Still January to come as well. Liverpool. Let's have a look at what their summer scene produced. Christian Benteke, of course, was the headliner. Firmino and Klein and Gomez earlier on this summer. Enough to save Brendan Rodgers' long-term future at Liverpool.
I have my doubts.
You do?
I have my doubts. I don't think it's taken them into the top 4. As bad as Chelsea, Arsenal may be, and Man United, I don't see this Liverpool team getting in the top 4, and I think that probably will cost him his job in the end with the amount of money that he spent.
Got a lot of money in for Sterling and spent a chunk of it. Will it be enough?
Putting a lot of faith in Firmino and Benteke, obviously, at the attacking ends. Curious, at the back with Joe Gomez, playing him every game.
Yeah.
Seems to be on board with that. But I think Craig's right. He needs to show marked improvement heading towards the top 4.
The truth is that Liverpool, outside of that first half against Arsenal, have not looked very good, even when they're getting results. And then they lose at home 3-0 to West Ham, and you start thinking to yourself, this team is not good enough. They don't have enough players. They don't seem good enough. They're not really showcasing the best of those players out on the field. And in the end, if you're not getting results, I don't care who you are, you're going to be out.
But he did say, Brendan Rodgers, Dejan Lovren. He said he'll come good. He said he'll come good.
That worked out well.
Benteke, surely the man to power them into the top 4. All will be revealed. We'll see. When we return, any further business? Well, actually, yes, there was. And actually, there wasn't. Some more drama involving a West Bromwich Albion player. Other notable moves on the final day of the transfer window. Everton have picked up a new defender, Ramiro Funes Mori. Aaron Lennon has made his Everton stay permanent. The new Chelsea defender we told you about, Julian Lescott, swapping clubs in the city of Birmingham, but that is about it. But another move that didn't happen, gentlemen. Saido Berahino from West Brom to Spurs. Spurs tried to get him, tried 4 times to get him. Jeremy Peace kept on turning down those offers, turned down the last one. It prompted this response from the West Brom striker in the direction of his club owner. Sad how I can't say exactly how the club has treated me, but I can officially say I will never play Jeremy Peace.
Until next week?
Yes.
Or 2 weeks after the international break.
What do you make of it?
Well, it's been a bumpy summer for Saido Berahino because he left his agent, A.D. Ward, who was also Raheem Sterling's agent. And I think he really thought he was going to get to go because he's entering the final 2 years of his contract and so on. But as he said, you know, you got Daniel Levy, you have Jeremy Peace, you've got 2 very tough negotiators and 2 guys who are ready to walk away from a deal if they don't think it's right.
Was this some drama with West Brom? Remember Odom Wingy last year turning up at QPR? This year it's Berahino.
You know who had no drama coming to West Brom? Jose Salomon Rondon from Venezuela. That's right. No drama there. Huh? That's all right. You want a deal done? You go to Venezuela, baby.
That's why I thought they would let Berahino go, because Rondon's come in.
Right.
Ali knows him. He did particularly well when he played. He looks as if he fit in nicely to the way they play. They've got Lambert who come in as backup or a different option. They've got Callum McManaman that come in as a winger, because Berahino could also play wide. And I don't get these players. And on social media, they put stuff out before transfers are done. The bottom line is we don't know what goes on behind the scenes, but a club is not treating you badly if it doesn't let you go or accept a bid if you're under contract. That's the bottom line.
We don't know what happened behind the scenes. So,
well, how bad can it be? You're not going and we're not accepting a fee.
Is he in any danger of breaking his contract with this?
No.
People suggest it on Twitter. I don't think so.
No.
I mean, he's
not bringing a club into dispute or anything.
If he actually refuses, well, first of all, England's not a police state just yet.
Right.
But secondly, if he physically refuses to play, then he could face fines and be in breach of contract and so on. But simply saying that you're not going to play, no, that's not an issue.
So, in final thoughts, gentlemen,
Boring.
What we've seen. You know,
boring.
It's an odd transfer. Sometimes I think the transfer window should be a lot shorter because make it 1 hour. Every club has to do all their business in 1 hour. That would be fun.
It's tedious, isn't it? I mean, it's tedious. We've talked about it all summer here on the show. There's been no football/soccer on the TV. Well, there's been a little bit. We've had to talk about transfers and, you know, this is going to happen and that's going to happen.
You know who loves that?
Enjoyed it.
This guy loves
I
it.
love it.
This guy.
We had the
Gavometer.
the Women's World
Well,
Cup.
I'm talking about transfers.
Just the transfer window. Does it need to change, Gab?
It
Should be
does.
shortened,
It's
lengthened?
fine.
Should
It does.
I don't understand this. When you first started playing, transfer window pretty much ran all year. Now you're complaining. Now that you've retired, you're
That's
complaining.
my job to complain.
The transfer window has created a Gavometer. Huh? Come on now.
That's enough
you
reason
love
to
it.
change
That's what you love it.
Exactly.
Well, I've got very good news for you guys. There's only 121 days, 3 hours and 14 minutes till the next transfer window opens. And we will bring you back.
Can't wait
on that. Utterly bizarre, isn't it? But the long and the short of it, it means David De Gea is still a Manchester United player. So what does it mean now, Greg?
I see another statement from Real Madrid and Man United saying, well, it wasn't us. We did what we had to do. I mean, who cares? Who cares?
He's
Bottom
got
line here is what I'm looking at now, probably like most people, and David De Gea, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
Clearly there was a management issue in how it was managed up to now. Van Gaal said the player wasn't ready to play. De Gea said he was. Van Gaal said he sent the goalkeeping coach in to speak to him rather than speak to him himself. It's a whole mess. He now has to manage that situation. The bottom line here is, I think Real Madrid will get their man eventually, either in January or for zero in the summer. And Man United have got to manage that player between now and the end of the season, of course, register him for the Champions League.
And Sampdoria. And now all of a sudden, he's asked to keep goal at the Theatre of Dreams. It's what you call a pretty dysfunctional setup.
Dysfunctional, so much so that now, if you're Louis van Gaal, it's not only about managing, but making a practical decision. Because in the end, you want the best player out on the field. So if you think that David De Gea is your best goalkeeper, whatever differences you've had up until this point, you put him out on the field.
Well, unless he hit his head repeatedly, he has to think that David De Gea is his best goalkeeper. He'll need some time to work on it, but I think ultimately, you know, it's in David De Gea's interest to play for United, and it's in United's interest to have him play for him. The one wrinkle, though, is if you are hoping to move him in January, and that's going to be at a cut price, is do you play him in the Champions League which of course opens up a whole other layer, because if he's cup tied, Real Madrid
league, and the Euros are next summer, so it's a real sort of 6 and 2 3s for the player in terms of how does he play? Does he play often enough? Does he play in the Champions League? Does he go in January? The losers here are Man United for me, because they're going to lose a top goalkeeper for nothing eventually.
Right.
Well, there's that, and there's also this fascinating, possibly unprecedented situation where you have 3 goalkeepers at Manchester United right now. One of them's De Gea. Craig summed up his situation and why there's issues there. Another one, of course, is Victor Valdez, whose deal didn't go through, and who is very much persona non grata to Louis van Gaal right now. And the third is Romero, who, looks okay playing for Argentina, but you suspect there's a reason that for the past 2 seasons he's been a backup at 2 different clubs like Monaco and
Hello everyone, welcome to the show. The transfer window, I feel, was well named this year. A whole lot of window shopping, not a lot of spending, I think, was the...
I should say the last day in England. I think,
right, last day in the Premier League.
Being a little Anglo-centric here,
A day later. Alejandro Moreno is wearing his Man City shirt.
What?
Gabriel Marcotti is here, and Craig Burley to discuss the winners and losers. Let's start with perhaps the incident that dominated the last day, the last 24 hours of the transfer window. David De Gea. It was David De Gea. He's not going anywhere for now, at least. It's rare, Gab, that you see a transaction where all the parties end up looking a little buffoonish, but they do, don't they? So, how did this happen, or how did it not happen?
All right, I'll try to give you the capsule explanation, but they had all the information. The deal was all set. What you have to do is you have to upload all the data to FIFA to get the international clearance. And then you have to notify the upcoming FAs that you're going to register this player, because we call it a transfer deadline. It's really a registration deadline. Something went wrong. Manchester United and Real Madrid are blaming each other, essentially.
Yeah.
They've sent out rival communiques. Real Madrid fired shots first. But the bottom line is it did not go through in time. The registration wasn't received by the deadline, which was midnight local time in Spain.
It is.